You're listening to Grad Pro Book, where we go beyond the summary and deep into the critique. Welcome back to Grad Pro Book, the channel where we peel back the layers of iconic works. In today's episode, we're going to dissect one of the most symbolic and also one of the most controversial business books of the 20th century, Trump, The Art of the Deal. Now, let's get one thing straight. Forget all the hype you've ever heard. Trump, The Art of the Deal is not a business manual. It is a toxic manifesto of narcissism, a guide to the art of deception disguised as advice for getting rich. This book, instead of teaching you how to negotiate, actually teaches you how to distort the truth, manipulate others, and worship your own ego above all ethical principles. The grandiose deals recounted in the book were not built on superior business acumen, but on a foundation the author deliberately conceals. A colossal fortune from his father, political connections greased with money, and the chaotic economic environment of 1980s New York. Trump's art was not creating value, but snatching opportunities from the failures of others. The so-called truthful hyperbole is, in reality, just a pretty euphemism for blatant lying. This book preaches a dangerous philosophy, winning at all costs. It completely ignores concepts of mutually beneficial cooperation, integrity, and the social consequences of one's actions. It is a detailed blueprint for building an empire based on ostentation, intimidation, and illusion. And in our conversation today, we will strip away that glamorous mask to expose the truth. To understand why a book like this has had such a lasting influence, we have to admit one thing. It is incredibly compelling to read. This is its first bright spot, and also its most sophisticated trap. Tony Schwartz, the actual ghostwriter, is a talented author. He transformed dry real estate transaction stories and tense meetings into a series of fascinating anecdotes, as dramatic as a Hollywood movie. You read it, and you feel like you're in the meeting room with Trump, feeling the tension, the excitement, and finally, the glory of victory. The confident, boastful, and somewhat arrogant tone of the Donald Trump character in the book, while potentially annoying, creates an irresistible pull. It's like an action movie where you know the hero will never lose. And that is a very satisfying reading experience. The book opens a door into the lavish, powerful world of New York real estate in the 80s, and who isn't curious about that world? And if you try to set aside the colossal ego that permeates the entire work, you'll find a few principles that Trump outlines are, in theory, not wrong. Take Think Big for T-Scene, for example. This is a powerful call to action, a spiritual boost for those limited by fear and self-doubt. In a world where people are often advised to know their place, Trump encourages daring to dream the biggest dreams. Or the emphasis on the importance of leverage, promotion, and persistence. These are all classic business lessons taught in any school. The stories of how he didn't give up on the Trump Tower project, or how he revived the Woolman Rink after the city had failed miserably, are vivid illustrations of a spirit that never accepts the word no. The book's appeal lies in that. It doesn't just theorize, it tells stories of victory. But, and this is a very big but, this is when we need to turn on our flashlights and peer into the dark corners. Let's start with the very foundation of the story, the myth of the self-made young man. The most valid criticism is that the book intentionally rewrites history, systematically downplaying the role of Fred Trump, Donald's father. The book paints a picture of a young Donald Trump with only a few $100,000 in his pocket, conquering Manhattan on his own. A beautiful, inspiring story. But it's not true. The truth is, Donald Trump did not start from the same starting line as everyone else. He started on a private runway, rolled out with a red carpet. He received a multi-million-dollar startup loan and, more importantly, the financial guarantees and reputation of his father's massive real estate empire. The political connections that Fred Trump had painstakingly built over decades in New York were not something that could be bought with money. That was a leverage the book never acknowledges. The book fails to distinguish the critical difference between thinking big when you have a golden safety net, and thinking big when you're walking a tightrope with nothing below. For the average reader, blindly applying this mindset without similar resources is not bold. It's suicide. The book doesn't teach you how to build a foundation. It only teaches you how to build a castle on the foundation your father already built for you. Next, let's talk about the art of using leverage. Trump prides himself on this ability, but when we dissect the examples, we see that his leverage didn't just come from smart negotiating skills. It came from exploiting a system on the brink of collapse. Look at the Grand Hyatt hotel deal. Securing a 40-year tax abatement, an unprecedented feat, was not a pure business victory. It was the result of aggressive political lobbying and exploiting the desperation of a bankrupt New York City. The book portrays this as a personal triumph, but in reality, it was like holding a gun to a drowning man and demanding he give you his life preserver. Similarly, Trump's media leverage is a double-edged sword. He is a master at turning everything into a drama, and he understands that the media craves drama. Bad publicity is sometimes better than no publicity at all, he says. The demolition of the Art Deco sculptures on the Bonwit Teller building caused a wave of public outrage, but it also put the name Trump Tower on the front page of every newspaper. This is a tactic that can be effective, but it teaches us that attention is more important than reputation, and that notoriety is as valuable as respect. That is a very disturbing lesson. The philosophies of fighting back and delivering the goods also need to be re-examined. Fighting back in Trump's world often crosses the line from legitimate self-defense into bullying and intimidation. Litigation is not the last resort, but the opening tool. As for delivering the goods, the successes like Trump Tower are undeniable. But this book is an extremely carefully curated autobiography, a highlight reel. It only talks about the home runs. What about the strikeouts, the failed ventures like the USFL's New Jersey Generals, or the subsequent bankruptcies of his Atlantic City casinos are all conveniently omitted. This omission creates a skewed image of an invincible businessman, and it severely diminishes the value of the lessons drawn. A person who only learns from their victories doesn't learn much at all. And finally, we come to the most toxic concept, the foundation of all the deceit in the book, truthful hyperbole. Trump defines it as an innocent form of exaggeration and a very effective form of promotion. Even Tony Schwartz, who helped Trump coin the phrase, later admitted he deeply regretted it. He called it a euphemism for lying, and that's exactly what it is. This philosophy erodes the entire credibility of the book and its author. It teaches that presenting a distorted, exaggerated version of the truth for personal gain is not only acceptable, but a smart strategy. It places perception above reality, image above substance. In a world where we are already struggling with fake news and disinformation, promoting such a philosophy is not just irresponsible, it's dangerous. It's not the art of the deal, it's the art of manipulation. So, after turning every page, what is the feeling that lingers? Honestly, it's not the enlightenment of a business student. It's exhaustion. Exhaustion from having to be constantly vigilant, constantly asking myself, what's the truth and what's the hyperbole? This book is not a dialogue, it's a monologue. Trump's voice, as channeled through Schwartz's pen, is both captivating and overwhelming. It doesn't invite you to reflect. It commands you to admire. In my personal assessment, the greatest value of The Art of the Deal today is not as a business book. Its value lies in its status as a cultural artifact and an incredibly insightful psychological study. It is a perfect artifact of the 1980s, of the greed is good era. The book is the embodiment of the spirit of Reaganomics, of wild consumerism, of the worship of the super rich, and of the blind belief that financial success is the sole and highest measure of a person's worth. Reading it today is like watching an old movie. You might find it historically interesting. You might recognize the outfits, the hairstyles, but the values and styles expressed seem outdated and at times alarming. The modern business world, at least in theory, has shifted. There's more talk about sustainability, social responsibility, corporate culture, and win-win collaborations. All of these concepts are almost entirely absent from Trump's worldview, a world of only winners and losers. More importantly, this is an excellent psychological study in the art of self-mythologizing. Donald Trump doesn't just sell buildings, he sells the Trump brand. And this book is a genius marketing tool for that brand. Every story, every anecdote is told in a way that reinforces the image of a brilliant negotiator, a born genius, an unyielding winner. He is the protagonist, the hero in every situation. Other people in his stories are either loyal allies, foolish opponents, or minor obstacles he easily overcomes. The worldview presented in the book is extremely binary. There are only winners and losers, the strong and the weak, good deals and bad deals. There's no room for complexity, ambiguity, or empathy. Everything is a competition, a battle where the only goal is to be on top. This is a very limited and, I must say, very impoverished view of life and business. It ignores the fundamental truth that many of the greatest, most sustainable successes come from cooperation, trust, and building long-term relationships based on mutual respect. When you place The Art of the Deal next to other classics of business and leadership, the difference becomes stark. The works of Peter Drucker, Stephen Covey, or Jim Collins focus on building sustainable systems, creating value for customers, and leading through service. They talk about creating a bigger pie for everyone. In contrast, The Art of the Deal is almost exclusively focused on one question: how do I get the biggest slice of the pie for myself? It is a book about taking, not about making. I personally believe that reading this book with a critical eye is a valuable intellectual exercise. It forces us to confront difficult questions. What is success? What is the relationship between ethics and profit? What is the price of unlimited ambition? It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of believing in perfectly curated success stories and about the importance of always asking, what's the real story behind this glamorous facade? Although I've offered some rather harsh criticisms, it would be unfair to completely dismiss all value in the book. If a reader can approach it with a sufficiently good filter to distill and discard the toxic elements, the book still offers a few somewhat positive lessons worth noting. First and foremost, it is an undeniable testament to the power of self-confidence and projecting success. Trump's ironclad belief in himself, while it may be seen as narcissism, is the primary engine that drives him to act. For those who are often held back by fear and self-doubt, this book can act as a mental boost. It's a reminder that for others to believe in you, you must first believe in yourself and your vision, absolutely. Second, we must acknowledge the relentless persistence demonstrated in his deals. The story of pursuing the Trump Tower project for years, facing countless political, financial, and community obstacles, is a practical lesson in perseverance. It shows that great achievements don't come easy. They require intense focus and an unshakable will. The lesson of not accepting failure and always looking for another way forward is a valuable message, as long as it's pursued within an ethical framework. And finally, a rather interesting point is that the book shows Trump, despite being the CEO of a large organization, has a profound interest in the small details. From choosing the peach-colored marble for Trump Tower, to arguing about the color of window frames, to calling a contractor directly to complain about a small expense. This shatters the image of a leader who only cares about grand strategy and highlights the truth that, sometimes, excellence lies in managing the smallest things well. In conclusion, The Art of the Deal should be read not as a business Bible, but as a case study of a unique personality and a cautionary tale. The reader can learn principles of ambition and persistence, but must also have the wisdom to recognize and reject tactics based on manipulation, ego, and dishonesty. It is a book worth reading, but only when accompanied by a strong critical filter. Thank you for listening. Your support means the world to us, so please consider liking this video and subscribing to the Grad Pro Book channel for more in-depth critiques.